and welcome to Business in Hawaii with Reg Baker. This is a weekly show that broadcasts every Thursday at 2 o'clock from 2 to 3. And you can find our schedule as well as all the other shows at ThinkTech Hawaii on their website, which is on the screen right now, thinktechhawaii.com. We also broadcast live on livestream.com if you want to catch us live. We're broadcasting from the very high-tech studios of ThinkTech Hawaii in downtown Honolulu in the Pioneer Plaza. Today, I have a guest that's going to talk a little bit about his successful company and what he's done over the years. We've got Donny Shimamoto from IntrapriseTechKnowlogies, and it's a technology company that offers technology services, including security, for a lot of companies in Hawaii and on the mainland. So welcome, Donny. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Reg. Great to be here.
Very good. Now, you've got an awful lot of credentials, and I saw on your website and on your business card an awful lot of letters. So you've done a lot, and gotten credentialed. Where did you get started? How did all this begin?
Oh, well, I'm a local boy, so I grew up in Aiea, went to Aiea High School, went on to University of Hawaii, finished a double degree there. So I was both an accounting and MIS major.
Ah, very good. Yeah. That's a tough double major, I think.
Yeah, that time it was, but it really met two of my passions, which is really accounting came very natural to me. So it was something that I could do kind of natively. Took accounting classes in high school, so that was kind of fun.
So you got started at an early age in the accounting area.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I went through a junior achievement program when I was in high school in Florida that had an accounting component to it, and that's how I started getting into accounting a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So, and I believe just full disclosure, everybody, my son actually worked for Donny for a while, and he was also a double major in accounting and MIS. Yeah. So I've heard all the challenges of going through that double major. So congratulations on that.
Thanks.
And when you got finished at UH, did you stay in Hawaii or?
I did, and that was part of the reason why I stayed at UH. So I had a lot of opportunity to go to the mainland, and it was really, I knew I wanted to be in Hawaii in the end. I wanted to be here with family and friends, and so that's where I said, hey, I should stay at UH because then I can be connected to the community, meet everyone else that's going through the programs, and completed that.
And having that network out there is always useful. You've got the family, you got the friends, you got the coworkers. Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have that network.
Yeah, that, I cannot emphasize enough how much that is, I think, a critical part of why I'm successful, is having built that network, having the trust of everyone that you've worked with, and being able to work and give back to the community here is just...
That's right. Yeah, giving back to the community is just another layer of developing that network because you get to meet a lot of different people that you normally wouldn't work with. Very good. Now, when you graduated from UH with this double major, did you go right into having your own business, or did you do something first?
No, I actually started off with, at that time, Coopers & Lybrand, kind of dating myself. So we started off with Coopers & Lybrand. That became eventually PricewaterhouseCoopers, and so that's my alumni firm. But I think it was a nice difference in having both the Big Four, well now Big Four experience, but being in a smaller office. And I always kind of look back at that and I go, there's no way I could be doing what I'm doing now if I didn't actually have that experience.
Creates a great foundation. Yeah. Now, when you were with Coopers, were you in the audit side or the MIS side, or what part of Coopers were you working in?
I'm actually all of the above. So I actually started off as an intern with them. I was on more of the IT side, internal IT. We helped get the laptops ready for people, help get them out. Then from there, I moved into the audit side, but I was what they called the dual track at that time. So we did both financial audit and we did all the IT audit.
That's where they started beginning to develop I guess some of the applications in an automated environment to run the test banks and all that. Yeah,
right.
I remember those days.
Yeah, yeah, it was called EDP.
Do you remember the cards, the index cards?
I don't. I'm not that old.
Yeah, that was a good time because you got to be right on the ground floor of all that as it developed, and you got to really watch how that all played out.
Yeah. I do. My class, though, at UH was the last class that took COBOL, so I can actually do COBOL.
Very good. I think, do you know anything about Fortran?
I know the name.
Okay, well, I'm dating myself now. So. But no, so that's great experience to have that with the bigger firms. You know, it creates a different type of structure, orientation, and a lot of training.
Yeah, and that training and actually the exposure, I think, is really the thing. You know, because after I did the audits, got to see a lot of different companies, and I think that's when you get to see this company operating that way, that company operating this way, and they're all doing IT, or they're all doing, you know, the same industry, and you're doing all the different things. It gives you really this blanket to work from. And I always think of it as, you know, what are the patterns? That's what we're looking for. What are the patterns? So that when we're working with a client now, it's okay, what patterns have we seen that replicate this or solve this problem? And then try to bring that in. And that was kind of the last part of my career with PwC, was really in the consulting group. So that we got all kind of fun stuff. I was telling you earlier, we got to go on a Navy ship and work on that for a week, and we were out in an aircraft carrier in the Gulf. So fun stuff.
That's an interesting story, and let's just deviate for a second. I mean, okay, so you were with Cooper's, a large firm, and you ended up doing some work on a Navy ship. Now, how did that come about, and what did you do, if you're allowed to talk about it?
Yeah, well, I guess we can't shoot everybody on, so we're actually. No, it was actually quite fun. It was, what we were doing was we were actually working with Pearl Harbor here, and that was the core. And we looked at how do we actually improve the operations of the Navy? What are they doing? We were focused all on what we would think of as back office. So it was all more administrative procedures. We weren't war fighting or anything like that.
You weren't pushing any missile buttons.
No, but you know what I did do is I actually built a database that tracked all the Tomahawk and torpedoes. Wow. And kind of looked at military has the same problems. It's inventory. It has to be maintained. It has certain regs.
You mean they lose these things?
No. But they have to track them and they have to maintain them.
Of course. Yeah. Well, I was also in the Navy, and I used to be what they called an ASROC sentry at times. It was a temporary duty assignment, and so I had to stand as a security guard for the nuclear missiles. Yeah, I understand. I had the security around those things. So, and you were out at sea for how long?
We were just there for a week. So they were actually doing war games off the San Diego coast. And so we were there observing what they were doing, looking at the administrative process in the back of that was happening in the bowels of the ship, really, because it was more that rather than the war fighting. It was so interesting. It gave me a new respect for the military. You know, we got to see night ops and the planes flying out at night, and we would get woken up because they would start doing night ops, and you just hear this boom, 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 and it's the planes taking off from the catapult. So.
Yeah, they go from like 0 to 150 miles an hour in half a second. It just shoots them right off. That's fun. So it's fun to hear this, because a lot of people wouldn't think of an accounting degree and working for a large accounting firm to have these exciting type of assignments. It's I think fun. And especially, I guess, in Hawaii or other places like San Diego, where there would be that element. I would imagine there would be a lot of Department of Defense type of work you could do.
Yeah, and we had teams literally across the world. So this was during the Persian Gulf War. So that the team, I was part of the technical oversight of everything. So I was just there to assist that team. That team stayed on that aircraft carrier, and they went all the way out in deployment into the Gulf and came back.
Wow.
And it's with that accounting degree as a base.
Very good. Now, most of the people on that ship would have gotten paid hazardous duty pay. Did you guys get any premium for being out there?
I actually think those guys did. If I remember correctly, we didn't. We were back here at headquarters, so.
Yeah. There's the other benefit is that if you're in a war zone, you don't have to pay any taxes.
Oh.
You're waived from paying any federal taxes.
Right.
So. Well, good. Was there any other exciting things that you did while you were at Cooper's like that? I mean, there's, I guess there's always going to be interesting assignments, not necessarily on in a battle group or on an aircraft carrier, but I'm sure there's other exciting jobs that you've had.
I don't know if it's exciting so much as interesting. Literally the exposure that you get. I think back to what you said earlier, that exposure that you get to so many different industries. Like I learned how to drink wine from Gwenak, from one of the brothers that ran Gwenak at the time, because we had to go out and do an inventory. The finance team was out there doing the inventory, financial audit team. I was out there to look at the systems. But we got to have dinner with the one of the brothers that was running Gwenok at that time, and he introduced us to the wines, and we had the spread, and I got the full education, and
That's great.
became a wino after that.
You know, and I was never involved in any winery work, but I was on a job that had an oil refinery. And so we had to take inventory, which requires you to go on the top of the tanks and drop the stick down and see how much is in the tank, and then take a sample. And when we were out there doing this on December 31st, it was cold, it was windy, this was on the mainland, the fire alarm went off. And you don't want to be standing on 500,000 barrels of oil when a fire breaks out, you know. And so we rushed back into the control room, and they told us, oh, we were just telling you it was midnight. So it was a false alarm, but it's something you remember.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So you were there for a few years. You did a lot of interesting and fun stuff. What decided to go into your own? Did you go into your own right after that, or was there something in between?
You know, earlier I mentioned my whole commitment to Hawaii, and that was really what it was. It got to the point, maybe I'm airing some bad laundry on their side, but they basically told me, hey, you're going to have to move to Virginia if you want to continue moving up. And I said, that's not where I want to be. I know I want to be here at home. And so I said, thank you, but no thank you. And I actually switched over to Data House, so went over to the IT side.
Really? You worked at Data House for a while. And they're still around, right?
They definitely are going strong.
But they've been around for a long time.
But that was one of the things that drew me to them. You know, it was I think they still are the number one computer consulting, you know, in local based one here in Hawaii. And so I wanted to be part of that. I was with PwC, we were number one in the world. So I wanted to be with number one here locally as well.
Very good. And so and how long were you with Data House?
Just under a year. That was an interesting transition because for me, coming from the accounting side, where, I mean, you know this, everything is so structured and regimented. You've got your audit plan, you've got your tax return, and you do exactly what it is. And even in consulting, you know, we have our methodology that we follow, and you do this phase, and then you do that phase, and then you do this.
Sign off on everything,
right.
Track
Everything's
your hours.
reviewed. So to go into the IT side, and it's not like totally go for it, but it's, okay, let's figure it out, and we're kind of figuring it out as we go along, you know.
A little less structured.
Yeah. That was really difficult for me. But it made me realize too, I think a lot of what we as accountants bring in is that structure and discipline of not just within the accounting function, but outside of the accounting function.
The methodical thought process, the sequence that you know that has some logic to it, you know, and I'm not sure that works in every scenario. I mean, sometimes with technology, you got to play some what-if games to see if it works or it doesn't. You know, at least that's my layman description. But you know, having that thought process structured and methodical, I think, helps in a lot of different ways. Matter of fact, from what I understand these days, a lot of the CEOs and the people who move into the C-suite has that accounting and finance background for exactly that reason.
That's definitely what we're seeing. I actually speak nationally at a bunch of conferences, and that's the data point that I really like. You know, we talk now about more the CFO being a stepping stone up to the CEO, and the CFO replacing the COO, so finance replacing operations, as the right hand of that CEO, so that they're the ones really that the CEO is leaning on. And of course, then it only makes sense when that CEO is ready to move on, that they then take the reins.
Well, and it goes back to the old cliche that if you can't count it or you can't measure it, you can't manage it. You know, you got to be able to, you know, count it, measure it, monitor it, and then you can control it. You know, as a matter of fact, you know, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but most of the casinos in Las Vegas the CEOs come from that accounting and finance background.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Well, casinos are all numbers. It's a numbers game, right? Playing the odds.
Oh, that makes sense.
You know, and you got to be able to quantify them. You got to be able to track it, manage it, monitor it, and react to it. And who better in a company to do that other than the accounting and the finance guys and gals?
Well, that actually points towards the trend we're seeing now, where there's all of the financial planning and analysis, and really I like to call it just planning and analysis because it's outside of finance. You know, all of the numbers or things that are happening really is about looking at understanding and pulling the insights from that. And I love that we're coming back to be calling ourselves accountants rather than finance people, because we're not just working with the dollars, we're working with all these other things.
Well, and that leads us to maybe a topic that we can get into right after the break, but big data and analyzing that big data, making sense out of it. All right, hold that thought. This is Reg Baker, Business in Hawaii. We're here with Donny of IntrapriseTechKnowlogies. We'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Rachel Jurgen with Aging with Grace. Please join us every Tuesday on thinktech.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Leatham, and I'd like to invite you to come and watch my show every Wednesday at 3. I'm interested in a variety of issues that have to do with politics and our local business economy. And I'd like to bring on guests who like to talk about everything from technology to social media to what we can be doing to improve our environment. And so I'd like to invite you every Wednesday at 3 to stay and watch my show here with Think Tech Hawaii. And I'll see you there.
Aloha! How you doing? It's me, Angus McTech, asking you to come join us on Think Tech Hawaii Hibachi Talk. Join me and my two hosts, Gordo the Tech Czar and Ender the Security Guy, every Friday from 12:45 till 13:45. See you on Fridays, and remember, let your wing gang free wherever you be.
Welcome back. This is Reg Baker, Business in Hawaii. I'm here with Donny Shimamoto, and we're talking about enterprise technologies. We were just touching base a little bit about the big data concept and finance and accounting, maybe more of the accountants getting into it and analyzing it. Donny, what's your take on the big data interest all of a sudden?
I think it's the buzz right now, right? And if we looked back maybe 5 years ago, actually at this point 10 years ago, business intelligence was the buzz. So big data now is really one of the buzzwords that's bringing back business intelligence. And it's interesting to me as someone that's been working in this area for probably 15 years now, to go back and go, no one ever really got business intelligence really working well. And now you're going to bring in big data where there's more data coming at you from all these different ways, and you think we're going to be able to do it right now. So I always, first when people start going big data, I go, well, let's go back and look at small data. There's now the ways where we can, instead of looking at a population, and I like using the example of customers being late, customers aging, true our accounting world, AR aging, and what customers are paying you late and what are you at risk for. And often we analyze that in the population and go, okay, let's look at this whole population, who's late. Okay, so these guys are really late, maybe we have to write that off. Well, if you come back and look at small data and look at things like, okay, there's a customer, they always used to pay us 15 days. It was due in 30, but they always used to pay us 15 days. And then now we're seeing that's going to 20 days, and it's going to 25 days. If you start looking at the small data, you can see that the trend is that something's happening and they're stretching that out, which probably tells you something's going on in that back end, and eventually they're going to crush that threshold. Right. So we can switch into that small data and apply more predictive analytics to say, eventually, in how many days this client's going to become a late payer. We can be more proactive, either on our side, stop the losses, or on their side, really have that discussion, go, hey, we see something happening, is everything okay, what's going on?
And that's a good way to manage a loss type of possibility. But you can also use that to predict potential future sales. If you see these incremental increases in receivables climbing all the time, and they're buying more and they're getting, then all of a sudden that starts telling you that they might be a really good customer you need to focus a little bit more on in order to get more sales.
Right.
So you can use this kind of information as also a management tool for increased sales.
Yeah.
I guess it's drilling down into that small data to make some sense of it.
Yeah, and really figuring out the models. Like we're working with a client right now that came to us and said, what we want to do is we want to understand more of what's happening. So they do HR work, and they're HR outsourcing. And so what they were looking at is, how do we know that we're going to lose a client, or how much is it taking us to actually service this client? So we're able to look at all the other things, not just the dollars, but how many service incidences are there? How many paychecks are being cut? How many new hires or terminations are we processing? And start to be able to correlate the dollar amounts for processing those, and also client satisfaction, pull all that together and go, okay, what is the insight? What is happening with this client? Maybe we're seeing a lot more incidences that maybe is a warning sign that they're eventually going to lead us because we're having some type of service issue with them.
Now, is this something that your company helps with? I mean, to come up with some of these key data points or some of these drivers to help identify, different things that might be happening down the road?
Yeah, we actually do a lot of different things, but that's one of the things I really enjoy doing. We think of it as the insights. So how do I take all this data that I have, and everyone's storing more and more data, right? How do I take all this and really figure out what's important? What is going to drive a different business decision? And the wonderful thing is that previously, 10 years ago, a project like that would have costed $100,000. The same project, and we're talking about a fairly good sized company, so it's on the higher end, $100,000. If we were to come today, we're looking probably more at 50, 60,000. Still pretty high.
But that's a significant drop.
Definitely, it's about half.
And why is that happening?
It's the maturity of the technology. So we're seeing it more capabilities coming along. But the thing that really gets me excited is it's actually coming down even lower. So we're talking about those that are kind of more in that mid-market. The tools now are coming out for even the small businesses, those that are operating on like a QuickBooks type of a platform. There are business intelligence tools that now go against that, and we'll actually look at all of the different things that are going on in your business.
Wow, now that's interesting. Now, have you gotten any examples of working with somebody who's got QuickBooks and coming up with some of this analysis?
Not any direct stories yet because, I hate to say it, but kind of like always, Hawaii, we're kind of late to the game. So we haven't seen a lot of activity in Hawaii yet. But honestly, even at the national level, and I speak at probably, it must be about 15 to 20 national events at this point, even they are just starting to get the adoption. We're starting to see the case studies come out. So yeah, we're like, if there's anybody out there that really thinks you can use this, we'd love to help you guys figure it out.
And that can be powerful. I mean, if you can create a data dashboard of some sort that a company can use to manage more effectively their operations, that could have a real impact on the bottom line.
Yeah, and the small business tools, the full projects, those are really, it's in the thousands rather than the tens of thousands. So it's super affordable. I just look at that and like, oh my gosh, we were paying hundreds before, and now we're paying a fraction of that.
Well, that's good to know. So if anybody had any interest to find out any more about this, how could they reach you and talk to somebody?
I would say the best one is just shoot me an email. Donny808@cpa.com is probably the best one. It's easy to remember because it's Donny, my name, D-O-N-N-Y, that 808 for Hawaii, right? And then CPA, what we are, and then just .com.
Very good. That's good to know. Now, what else does your company do? You do a lot of different things, and
Right.
give me some examples.
I actually like to talk about it in terms of the way that we help people feel. And there's two main things that we really help with. First is peace of mind. Second is vision and clarity. Peace of mind really, the topic we had for today was really about security and threats. So that peace of mind is really if I'm not sure about my technology, if I feel like I really I'm worried about something, whether I'm going to be hacked, whether I'm being backed up properly, whether I'm still going to have access to files, or something's going wrong, we can come in and kind of look at it and go, this is what's happening, kind of do that diagnostic and triage. And the difference between us and other IT companies, because we're really a CPA firm, is that we come in and we're not only trying to sell you the products that we work with, we're really trying to help look at the broader picture and go, well, what really makes sense? And then we bring those vendors in and say, okay, these are the ones you want to look at. The second thing we do is really more vision and clarity.
Do you also help them select the vendor that's best for them? So
Right.
you can bring in the vendors
Yep.
and maybe they can talk to two or three, and then you help them go through the process of picking the one that's the best fit.
Exactly. And it's really up to them. Some of them go, just tell us the names, and we say, here are the names, and go and work with it. Other ones want us to actually handhold them through.
Right.
And that's the process actually that leads to that vision and clarity. Because once we bring the vendors in, we kind of draw the visual to say, hey, this is what it's going to look like. If you were to use this vendor, it looks like this. If you were to use this vendor, it looks like this, and it's a little different. And we kind of get them through that so that it's not just the vendor's sales pitch. It's really more thinking through what it's going to look like in the end.
Right. No, and it's good to have somebody on your team that can, provide that type of comfort that you're making,
Right.
hopefully what's the right choice.
Exactly.
And sometimes salespeople can embellish a little bit. It's nice to have somebody with their boots on the ground that can tell the rest of the story.
Well, and that's where I love on that one, invoking sort of our CPA brand. Our loyalty is always to our client and to the public. And so as a CPA and as someone that remains independent and unbiased, our clients always know that they're getting even sometimes an opinion that's damaging to us, in a sense, like it's actually going to cost us more to do something, but we're still going to follow through on it because it's the best interest of the client.
Right, very good. And now you've got some staff, I think. How large is your company here?
We are, actually, as of yesterday, we are at 14 people total.
Very good. All right, so that makes you actually one of the larger CPA firms in town. I mean, in the top 20, I think, or 15. I mean, that's a good-sized firm.
Yeah, we were actually at 19 back around 2005, before the recession and everything started coming through. And that was when I first realized that. I was like, oh, a lot of CPA firms are actually kind of small.
Yeah. There's only a handful that's got more than, say, 25. There's just not that many out there. And there's a whole lot of sole practitioners. I think, the public may not know this, but, we've got about 1,600 members in the Hawaii Society of CPAs. Roughly half of them are in public practice, and the rest are all in government or teaching or retired or just working for a company. But the majority of that half that's in public practice are all very small 1 and 2 type person operations.
Right.
And I would imagine if these people needed to have any support in their working with their clients, is that a source of business for you to collaborate and work with these firms?
That's probably one of the biggest differentiators for us. So we work with a lot of the large firms, not only locally, but nationally.
Wow.
Because they know, for example, one of our business strategies has been to really focus on our niche, which is this overlap of CPA and IT. So in doing that, we don't do the audits, we don't do tax, we don't do bookkeeping, and we focus on this niche. So the other firms can work with us and not feel like, oh, they're going to steal our client.
Exactly. That gives them some comfort. That's good. That's good. And it's nice that you're actually getting some national recognition for this. This is quite an accomplishment.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind, but fun.
Yeah. And so, what percentage of time do you spend on the road?
At this point, I spend probably about 65 to 70% of the time on the road.
That's tough. I don't envy you. I know it. At first, it's exciting. I used to do that. I used to have fun with it, but I've just gotten to the point in my life cycle where I prefer just to stay home and take care of the clients I got here. And I'm glad you've got the energy and the ability to do that. That's great.
Well, it's really satisfying. Because the thing for me the projects that we go on to work with this are really transformational projects. So we're working with a client in Houston where we're actually fully changing the way that they operate and really helping them mature their business. They've been family run, family owned, 60 years they've been operating, and now they're finally starting to get more structured. That discipline we talked about earlier. And that's that change, but it's a lot of people change. And that's the other thing that we bring in is a lot of, hey, this is a person. We need to think about how this change is affecting them and help work through that, a little more behavioral psychology type of issues.
Do you get involved in finding people that might, if there are certain people that are there that might not be able to work with the transition, do you help them find people who are?
We sometimes can. I really don't like to do that. My philosophy is that I really want to work with what's there. And so that's where, as we come in and do our consulting, we look at what is the process that has to occur, who's actually performing these processes, and who has a role rather than a person. And then we look at what roles are appropriate to this person that we may be working with.
So you take the existing skill sets and try to find a place for them in the process.
That's my philosophy.
Oh,
Because I really hate to see people get fired just, if we can make a way to leverage them and their skills.
No, that's a good practice. So we need to go on another quick break here.
Okay.
We're speaking with Donny Shimamoto from IntrapriseTechKnowlogies. We're Business in Hawaii with Reg Baker. We'll be right back after this break.
Hello, everybody. I'm IC Davidson. Thanks for tuning in to Think Tech Hawaii. One of the things that we do here, or the thing that we do here, is promote civic engagement in Hawaii. What does that mean? We want to talk about things that people want to hear about, and we want you to engage us and be part of that conversation. One of the ways that you can do that is by joining in during our live show via Twitter. How do you do that? Well, you get on the interwebs and get Twitter, get an account, and mention us if you have a question. What you'll do is you tune into our show live, tweet us questions, and our hosts and guests will address them accordingly. It's really easy, it's really fun, and I think that your participation in what we're doing here will help us continue the dialogue on very important issues that we're trying to cover. Sustainability, clean energy, you name it, we're on top of it. We want you to be part of what we're doing, because together we'll be able to make things change. Thank you for watching. Think Tech Hawaii, thinktechhawaii.com, weekdays 12 to 5 p.m. That was weird.
Welcome back. This is Business in Hawaii with Reg Baker. We're here with Donny, and we're talking about the Enterprise Technologies and this company that's been very successful, both locally and nationally. Donny speaks at about 15 or 20 different national events every year. So he comes with a lot of recognition and experience. So Donny, I'm glad you can make it today. During your process of building the company and getting this to the point you're at today, there must have been some challenges along the way. I mean, how did that work for you?
Well, we were just talking about people and finding the right fit for people. And I think every business owner that I've talked to, people is probably always the biggest challenge. Whether it's the finding the right ones and the right skill sets. And for a company like us, that's even more amplified because we are a specialist. And so while we do have a very strong internship program, they aren't able to come in and hit the ground running. And so it's really about finding someone that has this overlap between the accounting and the IT, and that can look at the bigger and broader picture.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, and it's particularly important, I think, when you're in a consultancy role, is that the people that you choose may independently have a lot of the skill sets, but they also have to mesh well with the other people, and they have to complement each other. And there's this interpersonal environment that has to be, a positive one. Mm-hmm. And some people fit into that better than others. And so I think, that's got to be an important part as well.
Yeah, we've actually just started, we've been using it for about a year now, a tool called Berkman. It's a personality assessment.
I've heard about it. Yeah.
If you asked me before, I would have been like, that's mumbo jumbo. But it actually came at a time where I was going through a lot of stress at a national level. I was involved in some national committees, chair of a national committee actually, and I was at the point where I was going to resign. Oh. And I took this Berkman personality assessment, and the person interpreted the report for me, and she said, "This is what happens when you're under stress." And I was like, oh my gosh, I am under like this much stress right now, and you're totally just reading me. How did you know that that's what I'm doing? And so now we actually use that as part of our hiring.
And it's a pretty extensive test. I mean, it's almost like a little book that you have to fill out.
Yeah, it's all online now.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it used to be. It used to be a little booklet.
Yeah, no, I've taken it. When I was at the Bank of Hawaii, they had a lot of their senior executives go through that and then have coaching sessions, and it's very valuable. Yeah. And it's scary how predictive it is.
Yes. But we've also expanded it now where we actually use it with clients as well. So some of what we do sometimes is we'll do coaching around the IT person. A lot of companies, especially in Hawaii, you maybe have one IT person, they can't do everything. And so they need to provide a career path for them. They need to understand what's happening, and maybe they're having some issues with them. So that's a tool I actually like to use with that to say, okay, let's understand what this person's coming from. And let's see if we can, again, it's this whole don't throw away the person. Let's figure out what the right role for them is and get them in that right role, and then we can supplement around that.
It sounds like a lot of what you do is education. I mean, you educate a lot of the people, the clients that you work with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, we've just switched our methodology. So we used to be per se traditional consulting, where when you hired us, we came with this big price tag and you got to go through this whole rigmarole of a process. We just started offering, we have 3 offerings for everything that we do now. We have the full service, traditional, pay the dollar amount. We have a guided approach, which is a combination of you need to provide some staff. We'll take that staff, teach them how to actually do what needs to be done. They do the majority of the work. We'll come in, still provide all of the analysis, look at everything, help work with that staff to think through what actually has to happen. That's about 50% of what that full would have been. And then we actually have an advisory-only engagement now where all we do is say, tell us what you're doing, here are the tools and templates, let us give you some learning around how you need to think about it, and have fun. And you're welcome to call us anytime you're going through that, and we'll help explain and make sure you're doing things right and look at it.
I would imagine that the long-term success would be probably in that middle choice there to get them involved and actually train them,
Yeah.
and get them, actually doing the ongoing maintenance on it.
That, I completely agree with you. I mean, and that's why I don't think a lot of people realize it comes back to the human element, right? If I do this full service engagement for you, it's me coming in and the client goes, well, that's what he said. Or, if it's your staff that we're doing something on because you have a problem with the staff, they're like, well, that's what they said.
There's no buy-in.
Exactly. That guided, they're there with us. It's like they're coming up with it. You've got ownership, you've got continuation, and you can actually maintain the solution as you're going forward.
Well, and they've got some skin in the game. It's to their best interest to be able to make this successful since they're the ones that are actually doing a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very effective. What challenges have you encountered, that, gave you some pause? Because I'm sure our audience is listening to this and, not everything works beautifully and there's always hiccups here and there. I mean, have you had any of those along the way?
Oh, tons. Tons, and that actually makes me think back to a panel that I spoke on at one of our national conferences. There was 3 of us on the panel, and it was 3 of us that were all individual business owners. We're all roughly about the same size at that time. We're all about 10, 12 people. And 3 guys, and we were all about, somebody asked a question and one of the guys said, well, I have to tell you that I was in tears. It was the first time I was in tears. And the other 2 of us looked at him and we said, thank you for saying that. Because, especially with the male persona, it's like you gotta be this rough, tough, and when you're the leader of the company, you gotta be that. No matter what, nothing's going wrong. And we just said, hey, you know what, we had the same experience where we'd go home crying, or you're home and you're just kind of crying because you're just like, I don't know how to solve this. But
Very frustrating.
Very frustrating. But you make it through it. And I think it's through having advisors that you can reach out. I mean, just like we're an advisor, I have my own advisors that I go to. And I think it's also, I've learned to adopt the fail fast. So run experiment, do something not on a grand scheme, but on a smaller area, work with that. If we can make that work, great. If it doesn't work, let's figure out what we did wrong and then try it again and tweak those things that didn't work.
Almost like a trial and error.
Well, actually, I would think of it as scientific method because it's experiment and hypothesis and experiment, hypothesis and experiment. So not quite just do anything.
It's not haphazard.
Yes, yeah, that's a great way to say it.
Right. No, that's very good, and I think that's a good message for the audience to understand that nothing ever works exactly the way you're going to predict it's going to.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do have to tweak things, and especially when you're small, it's important to recognize when you need to make a change and do it fairly quickly. Otherwise, you could end up losing a lot of money and a lot of wasted time and effort.
Well, I think when you're small too, it's an advantage that you have. And that's where, I talked about staying in Hawaii. One of the reasons I also left the big firms is I didn't want to be working with the big companies anymore. I really wanted to be working more with small business because that's where we can really have an impact. And then, working with family businesses because they're working through these issues. And if you can help them figure out that experiment and do it, they can actually get ahead of the big company because they can do that experiment, it works, and they can just run with it. The big company does the experiment, then they have to put it into the department, and then they have to put it into the whole company. And by the time they're done with that, it's 2 years later.
Well, and then they got to check with the mainland headquarters to get the blessing.
Yeah.
I watch, and I know some of the big box and some of the bigger, retail stores have a local buying merchant, but they're limited sometimes. And to be able to compete with the local retailers who can make those local buy decisions very quickly.
Yeah.
The big guys can't compete with that because there's a bigger process that they have to be involved in.
Right.
And that's an advantage that I think that some retailers could really take advantage of. Very good. Any other, examples of a challenge that you had and how you got around it, and or do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to share with the audience? Any thoughts?
It kind of tied together. Part of the challenge, I think, is, especially when you're in a smaller business, like we really are a small business, it's how do you get your name out there, and what do you invest in? And so that's where, when I look back, there was one of the women that I was working with here on a board, and she saw I was being very active in the community. I was in the IT association, I was in the CPA association, I was in local level, national level, and she said, that's brilliant what you're doing, because again, we were in that downturn. She said, you're networking, you're talking to people, and you're making a difference because you're actually doing something rather than just going and schmoozing. We're actually involved in the association and helping make change. And that really stuck with me. And so that's what I would advise anybody, whether you're a student or whether you're in business, it's about really kind of giving back, giving freely, not like, hey, Reg, let me do this thing for you. That's the whole thing. Why we're all disgruntled with politics right now. And I did that at the national level, and it was amazing for me at the age of, at that time, 30, to be able to call on some of the global heads of IT audit departments and say, hey, I'm running into this issue with my little client here in Hawaii. Can you tell me what you think I should do? And so that networking is really what helps.
See, and that's a great resource, is that when you do go out and maybe volunteer some time and effort with some of these nonprofits, you get to really meet some pretty powerful and important people. And you can develop friendships with them. And that they would be great resources to have as unofficial advisors for the firm. One of the messages that we try to communicate, through the SBA and even the chamber is to have a board of advisors and have a team of people that are different disciplines that you can go to and solicit some help, mentors in a sense.
Oh, completely. I mentor about 4 people now in Texas and New York, and one of the girls that I work with, she said, wow, I really want you as my mentor because we're so alike. Actually, we had both done the personality assessment. So we're so alike, there's no conflicts with us. And I told her, I will be your advisor on one condition, that you also get somebody that's completely opposite of you. Because unless you have that contrasting opinion, all you're getting is basically your yes man or woman.
See, and that's one of the cliches that I like to use, is that if you have somebody that's exactly like yourself, one of you is redundant.
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, you don't need 2 of the exact same thing. I mean, you need to have that balance. You need to have that different perspective, and they don't have to be devil's advocate every time. They just need to present a different viewpoint that's worth analysis.
And actually that it kind of comes back to that personality assessment too. We actually did that with our management team, and what we found, because it kind of puts you into 4 quadrants. And what I found is, I suspect my older management team was really weighted on one side. Now we profile more across all of the areas, and we are really starting to go into high growth and becoming much more productive, and I think it's because of that balancing.
Well, and that's something that I have found, is that you've got to have the people that are able to do the work, and then you got to have the people that can be the rainmakers and bring the work in, and they need to be balanced. So that's going to drive the success of the firm. Very good. Well, Donny, it was a pleasure to have you. I think maybe we can have you on the show again sometime in the future, and you can come back and give us some case studies on some successes that you've had, and how you've been able to develop maybe some of these dashboards for companies. And
I think that would be fun. I would love to get some of my clients up here and help show you what they're doing, because I really think it's really groundbreaking stuff here in Hawaii.
Matter of fact, if there's anybody from the mainland, entice them with a trip to Hawaii or something. They'd have to pay for it themselves, but we'll get them on the show.
Well, thank you again for having me.
Donny, very good. This is Reg Baker, Business in Hawaii. We broadcast live every Thursday at 2 o'clock from 2 to 3. Please check out the website at thinktechhawaii.com. You'll get a full schedule of all the different shows that ThinkTech Hawaii offers. Thank you, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Aloha.